With a gentle companion, find the wisdom to love yourself better. Today, we going through Irvin Yalom's classic book, When Nietzsche Wept. This book, blending philosophy, psychotherapy, and fiction, takes us deep into the complex relationships and intellectual clashes among Friedrich Nietzsche, Josef Breuer, and Lou Salomé. I hope you find some inspiration here. The story begins with one of our main characters, Dr. Josef Breuer, deep in contemplation as the bells of San Salvador ring. Dr. Breuer is a renowned physician of his time. He pulls out a heavy gold watch from his vest pocket and realizes it's already 9 o'clock. He rereads the silver-edged card he received the day before. This card is an urgent invitation from Lou Salomé. Lou Salomé, a young woman, leaves a letter for Dr. Breuer, inviting him to meet at the Café Sorrento at 9 the next morning. The envelope lacks an address, leaving Breuer puzzled as he cannot inform Lou Salomé that 9 o'clock is inconvenient. The next morning, Dr. Breuer arrives at Café Sorrento as promised. He searches the faces around him, trying to identify the impetuous Lou Salomé. Though his thoughts often drift to his beautiful patient, Bertha, he tries to focus, waiting for Lou Salomé. Finally, Lou Salomé approaches Breuer confidently, introducing herself and explaining that she has a desperate friend who needs Breuer's help. Her extraordinary charisma is striking and undoubtedly attracts many admirers. Lou Salomé tells Breuer that her friend Nietzsche is very ill and needs his help. Nietzsche's symptoms include headaches, vomiting, potential blindness, gastrointestinal issues, insomnia, and dizziness. Breuer agrees to take Nietzsche as a patient, but doubts his ability to cure him, considering despair not a medical symptom but something vague and indefinite. Despite Breuer's skepticism, Lou Salomé insists that Breuer is the only one who can treat Nietzsche and suggests meeting in Vienna. She mentions her brother, a medical student who interned at Breuer's medical center in Vienna earlier that year. Lou Salomé extends an unusual invitation for breakfast to provide more information about Nietzsche. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Dr. Breuer anxiously waits for Lou Salomé. This free time in his schedule is quite unusual. To meet Lou Salomé, he quickly dismisses his previous 3 patients. Breuer has mixed feelings about Lou Salomé. He finds her arrogant and self-assured, but cannot ignore her allure. He despises many of his medical colleagues, like Billroth and the older Schnitzler, and many illustrious patients, such as Brahms and Wittgenstein. Lou Salomé introduces Breuer to her relationships with Nietzsche and Paul Ricoeur. She recalls their intellectual honeymoon, discussing her complex times with Nietzsche and his sister and their serious philosophical discussions in Leipzig. Ultimately, Breuer decides to help Lou Salomé and agrees to meet Nietzsche. He states he has never refused to treat a patient. Lou Salomé feels relieved and agrees to stay in touch, hoping to become friends. Dr. Breuer's daily life is very busy. He sees 10 patients in the morning, attends more in his office in the afternoon, and engages in stimulating but exhausting conversations with Lou Salomé in the evening. Breuer is wealthier than most Vienna doctors, so he can afford to rent a small carriage instead of calling one when needed. Every evening for 15 years, Breuer has met with Dr. Freud at Café Greenstidel. Breuer confides in Freud about his troubles. Freud inquires about Breuer's patients and expresses a preference for research over private practice. Breuer advises Freud, pointing out advancements in medicine and neurology. Breuer is filled with self-loathing about his appearance and life. He despises his reflection, not just the gray hair and beard, but also the hooked nose, big ears, and broad forehead. He feels despair, questioning if he truly has everything he pursued in life. Meanwhile, Lou Salomé and Nietzsche's plan is progressing. Professor Overbeck agrees to help Nietzsche seek treatment from Breuer. Nietzsche's expectations of Breuer increase as he temporarily stays in Basel with his friend, Professor Overbeck. Breuer's first impression of Nietzsche differs from his expectations. Nietzsche has a solid male physique, but his appearance doesn't match Breuer's imagination. Nietzsche's voice is gentle, contrasting with the aggressive tone of his writings. Breuer learns about Nietzsche's ailments, discovering that the most severe occurred in the past decade. Nietzsche's distrust of doctors poses a challenge for Breuer. He tries to understand Nietzsche's condition and thoughts, but Nietzsche's emotional shifts confuse him. Breuer decides to read more of Nietzsche's works before their next meeting to better understand his condition and thoughts. Nietzsche poses 3 questions to Breuer. Will I go blind? Will these sudden attacks persist? Will I become like my father? Do I have a deteriorating brain disease? Breuer answers these questions in detail and discusses patient rights and responsibilities with Nietzsche. Nietzsche believes everyone has a duty to seek the truth, and doctors should tell patients the truth. He emphasizes that death is harsh, but the ultimate reward is not having to die again. Breuer asks if Nietzsche has considered suicide, and Nietzsche indicates he's more concerned with death's ultimate reward. Breuer is anxious about Bertha's worsening condition. He fears others knowing he loves Bertha and is troubled by anti-Semitism's rise. Breuer consults Freud about Nietzsche's condition, and Freud offers theories and advice. Freud suggests that Breuer attract Nietzsche by revealing himself, then switch roles to help Nietzsche fully expose himself. He emphasizes maintaining Nietzsche's trust and avoiding betrayal. Breuer's marriage also faces challenges. Matilda resents the time Breuer spends on patients. Despite this, once Breuer accepts a patient, he does everything to help them. In his meeting with Nietzsche, Nietzsche arrives early, and Breuer tries to make him comfortable, but Nietzsche remains reserved. Breuer diagnoses Nietzsche's primary issue as migraines and proposes a detailed treatment plan. However, Nietzsche rejects Breuer's proposal, arguing that stress is vital to his work and mission, and he can't afford intensive medical care. Nietzsche rejects Breuer's treatment proposal, citing numerous reasons. He seems unwilling to elaborate and prepares to leave. Breuer tries to persuade Nietzsche with patient stories, but Nietzsche questions Breuer's motives, accusing him of self-centeredness and selfishness. Breuer reflects on his motives, realizing his desire to help Nietzsche stems from various factors, including his infatuation with Lou Salomé, competition with Freud, and interest in Nietzsche's ideas. However, Nietzsche still believes Breuer would use him for self-aggrandizement. Breuer feels frustrated treating Nietzsche, nearly shouting at him. Nietzsche's pride prevents him from accepting help. Mrs. Becker tries to comfort Breuer and offers suggestions. In a conversation with Max, Breuer shares his troubles. Max reminds Breuer of his past competition with Brentano in philosophy class. Breuer feels confused about Matilda's distance and troubled by his sexual dysfunction. He considers leaving but decides to stay and face everything. Breuer is awakened by Mr. Schlegel, learning that Nietzsche is critically ill. He rushes to the inn, finding Nietzsche unconscious and in a grave state. Breuer administers emergency care, stabilizing Nietzsche's condition. Nietzsche's use of chloral hydrate was foolish, but unrelated to suicide. Nietzsche plans to leave Vienna for Basel on Monday. Breuer is surprised by Nietzsche's resilience and reflects on his actions. Breuer proposes a professional exchange plan, with Nietzsche acting as his doctor while he cares for Nietzsche's physical health. Nietzsche initially opposes but is eventually moved by Breuer's sincerity and agrees. Breuer confides in Nietzsche about his despair, seeking Nietzsche's help to find meaning and courage in life. Nietzsche writes to a friend about the plan, expressing curiosity and excitement. Breuer suggests Nietzsche use a pseudonym to protect his privacy. Nietzsche is curious and guesses its significance. Breuer regrets the unnecessary excuse. Lawson Medical Center is a beautiful 4-story white stone building housing 40 patients with neurological and psychiatric conditions. Breuer and Nietzsche receive a grand welcome. Breuer chooses a bright, spacious room for Nietzsche, requesting a desk, gas lamp, and comfortable chairs. Nietzsche lists Breuer's problems and decides to discuss them systematically. Nietzsche questions Breuer's treatment methods and demands an alternative. Breuer shares his treatment of Bertha, his symptoms, and improvements. Nietzsche finds Breuer's methods ineffective and suggests he find his own strength. He points out that Breuer's thoughts are the issue and advises him to consider what he'd think about if not these intrusive thoughts. Breuer spends much private time with Nietzsche, causing insomnia. He dreams of talking to Nietzsche in a room without walls. In another dream, he sits in a bathtub with insects, small parts, and asphalt flowing from the faucet. Nietzsche believes fear doesn't arise from darkness, but is always there like stars, merely obscured by daylight. Breuer and Nietzsche discuss power, sexuality, and growth. Breuer thinks their relationship must be understood through power, while Nietzsche disagrees. Nietzsche sees sexuality as enslaving others, while Breuer views it as part of life. Nietzsche believes growth is a painful reward, while Breuer feels chaos and turmoil. Breuer recalls his past, feeling his life has peaked. He often feels aimless, with old goals no longer effective and lacking the ability to create new ones. Nietzsche suggests Breuer's goals are insufficient and advises him to pursue his existence, transcend himself, culture, family, and sexuality. Breuer feels confused and uneasy about Nietzsche's advice, but Nietzsche believes Breuer needs to understand his evil and learn self-liberation. Breuer uses Nietzsche's name in therapy, feeling uncomfortable but recognizing the constructive nature of their discussions. Mr. Mueller values privacy and solitude at Lawson Medical Center. He dines in his room and spends most of his time alone. Dr. Breuer, overwhelmed by December's illnesses, finds his conversations with Nietzsche painful and exhausting. Lou Salomé wants to know Nietzsche's true feelings about her, but Breuer insists on patient privacy, unable to disclose Nietzsche's condition. Breuer feels anger over Nietzsche's blame for his obsession with Bertha, driven by jealousy. Breuer's dreams symbolize his relationship with Nietzsche. Nietzsche believes dreams are a comfort to help us through the night. In discussions about love and suicide, Breuer sees love as painful but universal. Nietzsche views God's non-existence as a reason for cheer. Breuer questions Nietzsche's methods, finding them confusing and challenging. Nietzsche tries different approaches to counter Breuer's delusions, but fails. Breuer remains puzzled and critical of Nietzsche's methods. Nietzsche sees symptoms as messengers of meaning, disappearing only when understood. Breuer's obsession with Bertha leaves no time for deeper thoughts. He realizes Bertha represents escape, passion, mystery, and dangerous freedom. Nietzsche gains new insight into Breuer's relationship with Bertha, seeing her as a liberator granting reprieve from his death sentence. Nietzsche reflects on his mission to destroy religious hope. Breuer and Nietzsche discuss views on death and life while walking in Vienna's Central Cemetery. Nietzsche introduces the concept of eternal recurrence, questioning if all possible events haven't already happened. Breuer fears eternal recurrence, but Nietzsche encourages him to embrace it and use it to change his life. Nietzsche believes self-liberation means a sacred no, even to responsibility. Breuer decides to leave his family and profession to pursue freedom and self-discovery. He feels free watching pigeons fly and has a deep conversation with Matilda. Under hypnosis, Breuer experiences leaving his family, friends, and patients, feeling the fear of freedom. Breuer's feelings for Matilda shift from infatuation to deep love. He accepts his chosen life, no longer escaping. He realizes his true enemies are aging, death, and his fear of freedom. Breuer announces his recovery, surprising Nietzsche. He simulates abandoning marriage under hypnosis while maintaining it in reality. Nietzsche struggles internally, craving friendship but fearing self-betrayal. Breuer understands Nietzsche's struggle, inviting him to stay at his home. Nietzsche confesses his feelings for Lou Salomé, his loneliness and despair. Breuer responds to Nietzsche's confession, sharing their feelings and insights. Breuer continues his practice happily for over 30 years, but never uses talk therapy again. Nietzsche embarks on a new journey alone, heading to Italy for warm sunshine, a mild climate, and a true meeting with Zarathustra. That's all for today. This book not only presents the intellectual clashes between Nietzsche and Breuer, but also explores the intersection of philosophy and psychotherapy, revealing the struggles and quests deep within the human soul. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.